welcome back to my channel. Today I'm doing my March wrap-up. So I ended up reading 10 things in March, which I'm super happy with. I read the 5 books that was on my TBR for my bookish bingo, and then I read some other things as well. But as usual, let's start with going through what I read for my bookish bingo prompts. The first prompt that I got was LGBTQIA+, and for this prompt I read Lost and Found by Lucy Lennox and Sloane Kennedy. This is a second chance, friends to lovers, contemporary romance. It's about 2 guys who used to be best friends when they were kids. They were pretty inseparable, but then one day something happens that basically just ends their friendship overnight. One of them ends up moving away and they haven't seen each other since. And now it's 15 years later, they meet each other again unexpectedly. One of them, Sander, he is like a hiking wilderness guide, and the other one, Bennett, he is there with he's the leader for a group of kids, or a group of teenagers I should say, and they are going on a week-long hike and Sander is going to be their guide. So I started this book in my Bookathon vlog. I think I got to maybe 30% or something in that vlog, and I mentioned that I enjoyed the book at that point, and I did. I wasn't loving any of the main characters even in the beginning, but I figured they would kind of grow on me and there would be some character development and stuff, but unfortunately that didn't happen. I ended up not liking this book very much. There was just so much miscommunication, misunderstandings. It felt maybe a bit too melodramatic, maybe. There was just over-the-top jealousy and jumping to conclusions that made no sense. And I just never really liked any of the main characters, basically, which in turn made me not really care what was happening with them. There were also things about the story that just didn't make that much sense to me. There were things, and one particular thing that happened towards the end that I just did not see the point of it all. And this just didn't work for me, and I'm sad about it because I had some expectations for this book, but it just wasn't for me. So this is a first book in a series. I don't think that I will continue reading the series, honestly. I know who the second book is going to be about. If I was super excited about that character, then maybe I would have given the second book a try, but I'm not really, so I think I'm just going to DNF the series. I will, I think, check out other books by these authors, maybe books that they've written separately, just to see if it's their style I don't like, if it's one of them I don't like, or if it was just this particular book that just did not work for me. But yeah, like I said, I just ended up not really liking this. When I finished it, I figured maybe it was a 3-star book, but after thinking about it for a while, I think it's probably closer to a 2, maybe a 2.5, because in the end there just wasn't that much that I enjoyed about this, unfortunately. So that book ended up just being a big disappointment. So the second prompt that Bookish Bingo gave me was to read a book by a new-to-me author. And for this prompt, I ended up reading Stamped from the Beginning, The Definitive History of Racist Ideas in America, written by Ibram X. Kendi. In this book, you get pretty much exactly what the title says. So it's about racist ideas and how they came to be, I guess, and how they've changed and been debated over the years and the centuries. It's very well written, it's easy to understand, it's very informative. The author made so many good points in here. There were so many things that just made me nod along and go ah. And a lot of time he just made me see things in a very different light, especially in the last part of the book, because the last part of the book was about newer history. and like about events and people and things that I know of and remember. So while there were things in this book that were not new to me, I also felt like I learned a lot from this. I will say that I think maybe I did myself a little bit of a disservice by reading the audiobook. And not because the audiobook wasn't great, because the audiobook was great, but just because there is so much to take in this book. There's just a lot of information, and I find myself, or it's just easier for me to take things in when I read things with my eyes as opposed to like listening to them. And I think that's one of the reasons why fantasy doesn't really work that well for me in audiobook format as well, just with like all the world building and everything, like I have to learn about the universe usually in fantasy. So I did feel like maybe some things in this book were kind of lost on me just because I wasn't able to like comprehend everything maybe. And there was also like, I also found myself just wanting to like highlight things because like I said, there were so many good points in this, so obviously I couldn't do that with the audiobook. So like this is not really the book's fault, but I just wanted to like give a heads up to if anyone else is like me in this regard, because there's just like a lot of like this happened in that year, this happened in that year, and there's a lot of names and just there's just a lot of information in this book. But like it wasn't like any of it was like unnecessary. Everything needed to be there. So this book was still very good, but yeah, I kind of wish I had read it in like physical format instead. But yeah, I think I'm going to give this book 4 stars probably, and would highly recommend this book. It is very good and, like I said, very informative. So my next bookish bingo prompt was to read a short book, which is a book under 300 pages. And for this, I ended up reading Victoria by Knut Hamsun. This is a love story, I guess, though not a very happy love story. It's about Victoria and Johannes. They come from like different social classes. This book was published in 1898, and I assume it's set around that time as well. And I guess like social classes were a thing back then. It's not really, or I guess it's still a thing in many places of the world, but not so much here anymore. But it's definitely a thing in this book, because Johannes, he comes from just like a working class family, I guess. His family is pretty poor, I guess, at least not very rich. And then we have Victoria, and she comes from like the richest and the most influential family in the area. And the two of them, they kind of grow up together because they're sort of neighbors, I guess. So they like grow up together, even though Johannes is a few years older than Victoria. And they just, they fall in love, but they know they can't have each other. So there's just like a lot of longing, and there's a lot of like big words used to describe, or it's told from Johannes's point of view mostly, so he's just using a lot of like big words to describe his feelings for Victoria, who he can't have. So this is a like super short and quick book to read. I was actually kind of impressed how much the author was able to put into this without it feeling like rushed. I've seen the language in this being described as very lyrical, and I would definitely agree with that. Like I said, there's just a lot of like big words, a lot of longing and feelings. Personally, I didn't get that much out of this, I guess. It was fine for what it was, but it's not like it's going to like stick with me, I think. So I think I would probably give this 3 stars, maybe 2.5, 3 stars. It just wasn't that special to me. I am glad to have read it though. I am glad to have read another book by Hamsun finally. I feel like if you're Norwegian and you like books, Knut Hamsun is just one of those authors that you feel like you should read, you know. And now I have. Will I read more books by him? Not at this point, but in the future, maybe, who knows. But yeah, this was okay, but just nothing special to me. So the next prompt that I got was to read a book by a female author, and for this I read The King of Crows by Libba Bray. This is the 4th and final book in the Diviner series, and I don't really know what else to say about this book and the series that I haven't already said about, you know, the previous books in the series. And I also talked about this in my Bookathon blog, where I read the final chapters of this. It ended in a way that I found pretty satisfying, I would say. But I just continue to have like very mixed feelings about the series. I really appreciate how much research the author has put into the series, and I would highly recommend it if you want to read some like paranormal, YA paranormal mystery. But I have had some issues, in particular with the writing and also with the pacing in here throughout the whole series, really. That has kept me from giving it like the highest ratings. I think I would probably give this one 3.5 stars, which is pretty much the same as I've given the rest of the books. This one might be closer to a 4 stars than some of the other books have been. But yeah, I'm just very torn about the series. But I also feel like, I mean, I know I am super picky about writing style. And that is like my main issue with this series. So I feel like this could probably work for a lot of people in a way that it didn't quite work for me, I guess. So I would recommend this, but like if you're picky like me, then just be aware of the things that I mentioned about this series. And the final prompt that the Bookish Bingo gave me was to read a book with 5 or more words in the title. And for this, I read I Was Born for This by Alice Oseman. This book is about a girl named Angel, and she is a huge fan of a band called The Ark. The Ark means everything to her. It's all she talks about, it's all she thinks about, to the point where her parents are getting kind of worried that she's not focusing enough on her future, because she is at a point in her life where she has to make some decisions about like what she wants to study and so on. And at the beginning of this book, Angel, she is actually meeting up with an online friend for the first time, her friend Juliet. They have been like online friends for a couple of years, and they talk all the time on the internet, but this is the first time they're meeting up in real life. Juliet, she's also a fan of the band, and now they're meeting up together in London, and they're going to see the band. They're going to see a concert with the band, and they're going to like go to like a meet and greet as well. So they're both like super excited. And the other main character in this book is Jimmy, and he is one of the members of the Ark. And the Ark, it's pretty much 3 childhood friends. They are quite young. They became famous when they were like in their mid-teens or something. And at this point, I think they're like 18 or 19, I think. And Jimmy, he's really struggling with fame, basically. He's scared to go out alone. He's scared about the fans, I guess, because he's had some encounters with like very intense fans. He gets panic attacks, he has paranoia. He is just like struggling. He loves like playing music, and he loves his friends in the band, but he's just questioning at this point if this is even something that he wants to continue doing, basically. So this book just gave me so many feels. This is very much about fandom culture. It's about the wonderful things with fandom culture, and it's about some of the uglier sides as well. And it felt very like true to how it feels to be in a fandom. And it just took me right back to when I was a teenager, because I was a huge fan of the Backstreet Boys, and this just reminded me so much of that time. And I don't know what it is, but Alice Oseman just has a way of just writing books that just feels so relatable to me. And like, not like I said, necessarily relatable to me right now, but relatable to me at some point in my life, I guess. I think I mentioned in my TBR video that I was pretty sure that this book was not a romance, and it's not. There are romantic relationships in here, but they are more in the background. This book is very much about friendships, and I love the friendships in here, especially the friendships between the guys in the band. The one like little complaint I have about this book, I guess, is just like there were some parts in the middle, or like middle towards the end of the book, that just felt a little bit off, I guess, compared to the rest of the story. There was just something about the encounters, I want to say, between Angel and Jimmy that just didn't feel as realistic, I guess, as the rest, and that maybe like took me a little bit out of the story because of that. But that's also just me being picky, basically, because I mean this book was really, really good and I loved it a lot. But I just wanted to mention it because it's something that's keeping me from giving this like a full 5 stars. I think I'm going to give this 4.5 stars because it was pretty much perfect apart from that. Like I said, this gave me all the feels. I really loved it. I flew through this book. I read it in like a couple of days, and I usually don't read books that quickly. So yeah, I mean, this was great. And Alice Oseman just continues to be one of my favorite authors. And I'm so happy that I finally got to this book. So that was all my bookish bingo prompts, and then I read 5 more things. And without me planning it or being aware of it in any way, they all ended up having like a common theme, I guess. And because they were all contemporary romances that like heavily featured animals as an important part of the story, which I said, I did not plan that, but that's what happened for some reason. So the first one of those that I read was Better Than People by Rowan Parrish. Like I said, this is a contemporary romance. And in this book we have our 2 main characters, Jack and Simon. And Jack, he has 4 dogs. And one day when he is out walking them, he has an accident and he ends up breaking his leg. And because of that, he can't really take proper care of his dogs. He can't walk them. So he needs help with that, basically. So he ends up using an app that connects pet owners with people who are willing to help out with various things. And through this app he meets Simon, and Simon, he volunteers to help out with the dogs until Jack is able to do it himself. And Simon, he is someone who struggles with pretty severe social anxiety. He lives with his grandmother. She is pretty much the only person that he speaks with. He has a graphic design business that he runs from home, and he doesn't really have any kind of social contact, and the only reason he even like volunteers to help Jack out with the dogs is because he loves animals, but he can't have any animals at home because his grandmother is allergic. And it's just easier for him to be around animals instead of people because of his social anxiety. So I ended up absolutely loving this book, and I think that had mostly to do with Simon, because I absolutely loved Simon. Maybe because I could relate to him, because social anxiety is a thing in my life as well, and not anywhere near as bad as it was for Simon, but enough that I could like recognize things and relate to him, I guess. Jack as a character I was a little more unsure about. He has a complicated relationship with his brother, and I didn't like how he treated his brother in this book, at least for part of the book. But he was absolutely wonderful with Simon, and I really, really love their romance. There are a lot of animals in this book. Like I said, Jack has 4 dogs, and he has multiple cats as well. I think 3 or 4 cats also. And they all like have their own personalities, and they all play like a major part in the story. So overall this was just super sweet, and it wasn't quite what I expected. I expected when I picked this up to just like get a fluffy sweet romance with a lot of animals, and I did get that, but there was just so much more depth to it that I wasn't expecting, what with like Simon's struggles with anxiety. And because of that, this book just blew me away. It made me feel so many things. I think I am going to give this book 5 stars because it just made me feel things that I don't feel that often. And it was the kind of book that, you know, as soon as I put it down because I had to take a break, I couldn't wait to pick it back up, and all I could think about was, you know, picking that book back up and continue to read. So that is always a good sign. So I'm pretty sure this is a 5-star book for me. And because I loved this book so much, I ended up a couple of weeks later picking up the second book in the series as well, and that is Best Laid Plans. And the main character in this book is Charlie, who is Jack's brother. And because of that, we got to explore some more of their like brotherly relationship because, like I said, it's kind of complicated. Because Jack and Charlie's parents, they ended up passing away when the boys were in their teens. I think Jack was 13 or something, and Charlie was 18. And because he is a few years older, a lot of the responsibility after that fell on Charlie, because the two of them were pretty much alone after that. And because of that, a lot of his life has just been about like taking care of Jack, and also running the hardware store that he took over after his father died. And he just hasn't had a lot of time to focus on his own life, basically. And then we have the other main character in this book, which is Rye, and he is new in town, and he's pretty much there because he inherited an old house from a grandfather that he didn't even know that he had. So he arrives in town, and because he figures he might as well take a look at this house, because he's pretty much homeless at that point in the place that he lives, so he pretty much has nothing to lose. So he goes and he sees this house, and it's pretty much falling apart. It needs a lot of work. But Rye, he just figures he has nothing really to go back to, so he figures he might as well try and just put this house together and renovate it. But he has no idea what he's doing. He's trying to do it all based on like YouTube videos, and he keeps coming into like Charlie's hardware store, and he keeps buying these random things, and Charlie is just like, what the hell is this guy doing, you know? And he's just itching to help, basically. So that is sort of how the two of them meet. So this was just another wonderful book. This one also had animals. This one, it had 2 cats. They were pretty important, like, characters, I would say, in this story. I really liked both Rye and Charlie, and I really liked the romance. This probably didn't like hit me as emotionally as the first book did, but I think that was just because, you know, Simon's storyline in the first book just hit me so hard, and this one didn't really have that. But I still really enjoyed this one. There were some really good discussions about sex in here that I really appreciated. And, you know, before I read these 2 books, Rowan Parrish was a new to me author, but now I kind of just want to read all her books, because both these books were wonderful. I think I'm going to give this second book 4.5 stars, just because it didn't quite hit me in the same way that the first one did, but it was still absolutely wonderful and I loved it. And then the final 3 things I want to say that I read this month was 3 books/stories by Rachel Amber. The first one is Jaywalking, and I read that one in my Bookathon blog. I read the entire thing in that blog, so I've already talked about it. But just to give you like a brief summary, it's like a student-professor relationship. It's a novella. It's about 100 pages, so it's pretty short. I enjoyed it a lot. I really liked the writing style. I kind of wanted a little bit more from the actual romance, because I just didn't feel like it had maybe enough time to develop, or that we didn't get to see that, basically. And it just left me wanting a little bit more from it, basically. I think I mentioned in my Bookathon blog that I would give this book or novella 4 stars. I think maybe it's more of a 3.5 actually. But I did really like it, and I liked it enough that I ended up picking up the second book in the series as well. The second book is called Sleepwalker. I just finished this book today, this morning actually, and today it's the final day of March, so I just finished it on time to include it in this wrap-up. So I haven't really had time to think about it or just like put my thoughts in order, so this is probably not going to be very eloquent, but you know, I am going to mention it anyway. So in this book we meet Blake and Oliver. Oliver is a friend of Emil from the first book, and Oliver, he is a lawyer, and he's the kind of guy who just likes things in a certain way, and he just haven't really had a lot of room for like emotions and feelings in his life. But then one day, when he drives home to his house late in the evening, he almost like hits a dog with his car. He doesn't really see the dog until it's almost too late, because it's like just a tiny dog. And he ends up taking this dog into his house, and he tries to see if he can find this dog's owners, and he can't. And at that point he's just like, okay, I guess I have a dog now, even though it wasn't really something that he planned. but he needs help with this dog because this dog or she has obviously been through some things, because she is very guarded, she is kind of aggressive, and he doesn't really have the time to like give her the proper attention that she needs or take her walks and stuff. So he hires a dog walker, and the dog walker is Blake, and he is very good with dogs. So he ends up just helping Oliver with this new dog that he now has, and the dog's name is Cujo. So that is how the two of them meet. And yeah, I ended up just really loving this book. I wasn't sure at first, it took me a little while to get into it, but at the end I was just absolutely loving this couple. They are very sweet. Blake in this book, he is dealing with some pretty intense migraines, so that is like a big part of the story and a big part of his life. He's feeling a little bit lost because they are just affecting his life so much that he doesn't really know what to do with his life, basically. But yeah, their romance was just so sweet. And I ended up, actually this morning after I finished Sleepwalker, I ended up picking up or reading a short story that I had on my Kindle that is sort of connected to this book. It's just pretty much an extra story about Blake and Oliver. So I read that one as well. That one is called In the Mountains. So that was the final thing that I read this month, and it was also just like super sweet. And just I love these two characters, and I love Cujo, the dog. She's just so like, she has a lot of personality. She's super like just like feisty, and yeah, she is definitely an important character in this story. So I think I ended up giving both the book Sleepwalker and the like short story In the Mountains, I think I'll give both of them 4.5 stars, mainly because it just took me a little while to get into Sleepwalker, so I don't feel like I could give it like the full 5 stars, but it was wonderful. And at this point I will not hesitate to pick up more books by Rachel Amber, because yeah, I really like her writing style, and especially Sleepwalker was just wonderful. So, but before we end this video, I also kind of wanted to mention that I have actually started to read Anna Karenina as well. I feel like this is, at this point, has just become like my major project of 2021 to just read this book. I've mentioned that I kind of have to read it in order to complete my Pop Sugar reading challenge. And I have been super intimidated by this, but I figured I might just like start it and just try to take it like very chill and just read a little bit here and there. So it's just in an attempt to not make it feel as intimidating as I think it is. So I've started it. I'm 135 pages in, so not very far, but I also haven't spent a lot of time reading this. I'm basically just reading it during lunch for this past week, and a little bit and a few times outside of lunch as well. So I wanted to mention it. I have not put this on any type of TBR. I don't know how much time I will get to read it in April, because I have some ambitious reading plans. But I mean, I have started. I will just take however long I need to get through this, basically. I'm not going to stress about it in any way. I'm just going to be very chill, going to read a little bit here and there, and just, yeah, I'm just going to take the time that I need to get through this. But I wanted to mention it, that I have started. And I'm very happy to have started about it. And don't really have much feelings about it yet though, so we'll see. I don't know how much I'll talk about this, but yeah, I wanted to let you know that I've started, and it will probably take me a few months to finish, to be honest, but yeah, it's a start. So I think that's going to be it for this video. As usual, I feel like these wrap-ups are just getting so much longer than I planned for them to be, but you know, I guess I have things to say about these books. Let me know if you've read any of these books, or if you're interested in reading any of these books. So that's going to be it for this video, I think. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you soon with another video. Bye!